Hundreds of players are going to be attending the San Francisco World Championships this weekend. And to be honest, although I wish a lot of them could win, there can only be one. So I've picked my top 5 players who I think have a really good chance at winning this year's Worlds. One of them is a former world champion who could complete the greatest Pokemon comeback story of all time. One just beat a room full of the best Japanese players in the world. One of them is one of the most consistent players the world has ever seen. Another one of them has turned Pokemon tournaments into a trophy collecting event. And the last one is a Pokemon player from right here in Texas. And I'm not going to lie, I really want them to win so they can bring it back to Texas for another year. Let's break down my top 5 Pokemon players that I think can win the World Championships this year. And I'm saving number 1 for the very end, because if it finally happens, it's going to be a fairy tale script. And that's not even half of it. Let's start off with my hometown pick, Jonathan Zuniga, better known as Jonzu. And I'm sorry if I pronounced your name wrong. If you don't know him, Jonzu is a VGC player from Texas. He's actually a local, which already gives me a little bit of a bias because since he's a local and we obviously saw Gio win last year, I'm rooting for him so that he can bring it back to Texas for another year. But Jonzu isn't just here because I want him to win because he's a local. He's actually given me reasons to believe he can. During the Orlando Regional Championships, he actually had a post-game interview where he talked about how Gio kind of was motivating him to go out and win it big for Texas, saying that he was basically challenging him to play at a really high level. And that's exactly what Jonzu has been doing. At that Orlando Regional Champions, he put together an incredible run and finished 3rd place. Then during his first Champions event, he ended up getting 30th place at NAIC. But not too long after that, proving he's still hungry and wants to win, at the August Challenge, he ended up getting 3rd place, going 8-2 with the same team he ran at NAIC. Now, the reason I'm picking them over Gio is because of the World Champion curse. I called them winning last year, but again, that curse is making me say, you know what, it has to be a different local, and who better than Jonzu, who has proven with consistent effort and work that they are ready for this next step in their VGC career. Now, can I go 2 for 2 saying another Texas local is going to win? Last year I was saying Gio was going to win and it happened. Even though at the time we didn't have any crazy set expectation that they were going to win. They didn't win a regional, but they ended up winning the whole thing. And I think Jonzu could do the exact same thing. Tell me that wouldn't be an incredible story. Jonzu is my dark horse. That being said, let's move on to another player who I think could win the entire thing. I'm talking about Tsukide. If you have been following VGC for a while, you already know the name. Ko isn't just another strong Japanese player, he's a former world champion. And that's not the half of it. The reason I think he's particularly scary right now is because Ko just won a massive grassroots event in person. The Japanese Extreme offline tournament that was held in Japan earlier this month. I'm not talking about an event that happened in Scarlet and Violet. We're talking about August 2026. Right before Worlds, he sat in a room with the best Japanese players in the world and took it home. On top of that, earlier in NAIC, Ko actually made it to top 8, proving that they are very well adapted to the Champions meta. On top of that, they don't have to prove themselves to anyone. They're already a world champion, so they understand the pressure. They understand what it feels like to sit across the stage from somebody one game away from winning. They understand the gravity of the situation. Now it's just their time to take it and do it in Masters. Ko isn't walking into Worlds hoping he can hang with the best. He already has, and he's proving he is one of the best. And unlike Gio or any former world champion, the curse doesn't really apply to them this year because they didn't win last year. And that's usually only a back-to-back thing. Well, unless you're Ray Rizzo. But, that's a whole nother story. Next up is a player who I think is super underrated. Y bastante guapo el tío, eh? I'm talking about Eric Rios. And I want to make something clear. I'm not going to sit here and tell you Eric is redefining Pokemon Champions meta all the time. but they always have some spice in their teams that makes me want to vote for them. I remember a couple NAICs ago, they had Teal Mask Ogerpon on their team, and it was such a good pick for what they needed and what was being used against them. On top of all their consistency as a player, they have been on an absolute tear during Pokemon Champions. They did so well at NAIC, they ended up getting 2nd place. Before that, they ended up getting 8th place at EUIC. They got 2nd place at the Stuttgart Regionals. Eric has been on an absolute roll this year, 2025-2026 alone. Not to mention, they've been a really good, consistent player since 2014. And he hasn't just been playing well at events. He's also been top of the leaderboard in ladder for Pokemon Champions. And as part of his Discord, I've seen all the sauce. They keep on implementing cool picks for different teams, share it with their Discord. And on top of them just being so good at doing that, they keep on playing at one of the top spots in Champions ladder. So it's just incredible of how good of a player they are, and then just how good they can keep on playing. I think one of their biggest strengths is that when I see them play, I see them make very few mistakes. He's incredibly good at finding the edge or the tech pieces that can give him the edge without sacrificing consistency. Eric doesn't need to redefine the meta every single time he plays, but he's been really good at doing it, and he's been really good at playing better Pokemon than the person sitting across from him. And this year, it's been a lot of people. There was only one person that really beat him at NAIC. Since we're talking about the people that play better than almost everybody else, though, let's move on to our next person. And honestly, this player has one of the most terrifying resumes on this entire list. I'm talking about Marco Silva. And this man's accomplishments in just this year are insane. Marco is an absolute result machine. He does not stop winning. He's already the first player in Masters VGC history to win 3 international championships, and that was before he won any regional championships. And then this year, he starts swinging by proving he can win at the regional level too. He won the 2026 Lille Regional Championships, got good placements of all the internationals, and then he ends up by winning the Turin Special Championships inside of the Pokemon Champions meta. So isn't that crazy? He's been playing in every single different type of meta, proving himself to be a good player no matter what's happening. At this point, there's only one thing for Marco to do: win Worlds. That's the one thing he hasn't done yet. He's been to Worlds multiple times. He's made top 16 twice. He's won internationals. He's won regionals. He's won champion special events. Basically, he has a collection of trophies that most people don't and might never get. He has proved time and time again he can handle the pressure of big events. Marco isn't chasing his first big win. He's not trying to prove he belongs. He's chasing the championship. And that's what everyone loves to see about Marco. On top of that, he's proven that he's willing to bring creativity without sacrificing results. His Turin championship team was built around Parrish. He lost to Parrish against Wolfe in Toronto. Decided, hey, I'm going to master Parrish for the very first Champions event. Won the whole thing and became Marco con Parrish. It would be absurd to think that Marco's not number one on most people's lists, except for the next player, Wolfe Glick. You already know this was coming, but I'm not picking Wolfe because he's Wolfe. I'm picking him because the entire situation feels scripted. Let's go back 10 years. 2016, San Francisco, a young Wolfe Glick wins the Pokémon World Champions. His first World Champions. Now, fast forward 10 years, 2026. Still Pokemon, still San Francisco, and Wolfe is coming back. 10 years later, the same city, the same type of big event, a completely different game, similar mechanics, and somehow he's still one of the best players in the world. Wolfe is now a 10 times regional champion, a 2-time international champion. He's won GCs, he's won events, he's won a lot. And the one thing that kind of helps him a little bit more is that he's the only person on this list who's won the World Championships in Masters Division. 2016. Now think about that. 2016 World Champion. 2026 World Champion. Tell me that that's not like something written out of a book. But I'm not simply romanticizing the idea. He has the results to back this up. At NAIC, the biggest Champions tournament before Worlds, Wolfe finished 3rd place, going 14-2 in Swiss. So this isn't just nostalgia. Wouldn't it be cool if Wolfe won again? He actually has the results to back it up. And there's another reason I love Wolfe's chances. If you've been following Wolfe for a while, you know that after the 2024 World Championships, he wasn't feeling himself the way that he normally does. There was kind of this expectation for him to win really big because he went undefeated, and then he didn't win. And the negativity that he got from some of the people that expected him just to win everything was hard for him to deal with. And two things could have happened there. Wolfe could have gave in, could have been like, you know what, maybe I'm not about this anymore. Maybe, I've played long enough. He could have started casting with some of the people that he kind of started playing with, which is what they ended up doing. But Wolfe decided, you know what, I'm not going to do that. I am still one of the very best players in the world at Pokemon, and I am going to prove it to myself. I am going to prove it to the world. And he did just that. Wolfe took a little bit of a break almost after Worlds, but in the months following that, he won in Toronto, and then a month later, he won the GC, and then a little bit after that, he won EUIC, giving us one of the most iconic speeches about how it wasn't enough and how he is still one of the best players. And he had an amazing growth period where he learned how to deal with the pressures of being the most recognizable player in the entire VGC community. And he's learned how to handle that very well, I think, proving it this year and kind of setting the limits for what he's willing to accept from others and what he's not. And none of us will understand that because you can't simulate walking onto the world stage. You can't simulate knowing millions of people are watching. You can't simulate having one game left between you and a world championship. Wolfe already lived through that. And now he's going back to the same city where he became the world champion. Exactly 10 years later, still being one of the best players in Pokemon VGC. A couple years ago, maybe he thought he needed to retire, to pass on the torch. Maybe he thought that, he was getting a little bit old for this. But I think that growing period really helped him come out the other side a more rounded out, better player than he ever was. A now 10 times regional champion, 2-time international champion, and I'm sure he has high hopes of soon being a 2-time world champion. Although for now it's just 1 time, okay? But there's one more final story that I can't ignore. Because imagine this final. Wolfe Glick, one of the best players of all time, one of the best players who's been at the forefront of Pokemon, versus Marco Silva. The old guard against the new one. The player who has been doing it for more than a decade against the player who has spent the last few years collecting trophies at a ridiculous pace. And then imagine Marco wins in San Francisco against Wolfe 10 years after Wolfe won his first World Champions. This just wouldn't be a world champion. This would feel like passing of a torch. The greatest player of one generation handing the game to one of the most accomplished players of the next. But here's where it gets even crazier. Do you remember how Marco won Turin? He won with Parrish. Wolfe, if you remember, how did he win Toronto? He won with Parrish. Imagine if Marco brings Parrish to Worlds and he wins with Parrish at Worlds in a finals against Wolfe Glick. Marco Silva versus Wolfe Glick. And Marco wins with Parrish. The same kind of strategy Wolfe used to win Toronto. 10 years after Wolfe won Worlds in San Francisco, Marco beats him using the same weapon. This isn't a passing of the torch anymore. At that point, it's a movie. So here's my final prediction, okay? Jiangsu, the Texas Dark Horse. Ko, the former world champion who's peaking at exactly the right time. He's resurfacing. He's showing up again. Rios, the consistency machine who always finds an edge. Marco Silva, the result powerhouse who has won almost everything except for Worlds. And then Wolfe Glick, the man who has the chance to recreate history. If I'm betting on who wins, I think I have to go with Wolfe. And this is not a bot or NPC response. Wolfe is the reason a lot of us join into VGC. And is the reason that a lot of us continue to play. We see how, at least on my side, because I am older than most people playing, I'm in my 30s, I see him play and I think to myself, okay, he's about 30 or just turning 30. I'm not too old for this. It's not too late for me. I found VGC 29 years old. So I was introduced to something where a lot of people are exiting. I'm entering it. I went through some health-wise reasons that kind of put me into a lot of free time, and I discovered it in the hospital. And it was one of the best things that, to myself and to my mental health, I think happened. It gave me something to focus on besides the situation I was going through, you know. So I think that because of Wolfe being who he is, being the symbol of VGC, kind of like All Might with the symbol of peace, I think that him winning this would be better writing than any movie I've ever seen. But if Marco Silva is on the other side of him in finals and Marco wins, that would be literally an All Might to Deco passing of the torch. So it's up to everybody to make their own opinion. These are my top 5. Who do you think is going to win? Wolfe, Marco, Eric, Ko, Janzu, or did I miss someone completely on who could be the person to win? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will catch you guys on my After Worlds review video. Because let me tell you, I'm going to be having to review what happens, and I will be doing a stream on Friday, kind of just watching with everybody, seeing what people picked on their teams, and kind of just going over some of the interesting choices they put on their teams. So stay tuned for that. Subscribe, like, comment, do all that stuff. But if you enjoyed this video, please join the Grapevine. I'm Grape. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm out.